Okay, we have the X93L mini LED from Sony, and we have the S2000 soundbar. And I'm gonna tell you a little story about this.
Maybe I'll unbox while you're doing that.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. So let's move the soundbar to start. So, got to go to an event with Sony. It was really cool, called Lenses to Living Room, kind of talking about the production of the movies that Sony makes, all the way from cinematography and using their cameras and all that, all the way to how they display on these awesome Sony TVs. And it was interesting to see how they really focus on creators' intent when they're making TVs, all the way back to the movies themselves. So very interesting. But I wanted to see how in 2023 that goes for this X93L, because they have two different mini LEDs now. They have an X95L, which is the top one, and then they have this X93L, and we're gonna get the 85-inch X95L, so it's cool to have the smaller 65-inch version where more people are likely to buy this version over the 85-inch. And that leads me into sound too, because sound is important, which is why I wanted to bring the S2000 out, because TV speakers are not very good, and I'm hoping that that sounds a lot better and gives us a better movie experience. What have you pulled out so far? You're just yanking stuff out.
Yeah, so I have some cover plates here. We've got our two legs. Then we've got our bag of goodies. I like that there's a separate bag for the screws here. I don't know if that was intentional. And then we've got our remote and our, things we don't really look at.
Yeah, that's cool. The stand, I think, does have two different levels, which will be great for the soundbar. So I'm hoping that that can be stood up and get that soundbar underneath it. So,
me too.
All right, let's get that.
Really?
Yeah, I know you were really worried about that, Jen.
Sure was.
Right. You want to pull the top off?
Yep.
Oh wait, we got the little clips. I got these ones in the front. Let's do a race. I said the front, man. These are mine. I already won. Front, back. There you go. There you go. Everything falls out. I got this. Always very well packaged TVs. They got this thick cardboard on front, even some styrofoam. So this TV was really heavy when we brought it in. For a 65-inch, it weighs a ton. All right, pull this off. All right. You got the cover plates. Not really sure how we're gonna get the stand on. I think we're gonna spread it out, lay down the box here, and hopefully get the feet on. I'm gonna pop those little things. Let's just pick it up and stand it up, slide that stuff out of the way, and then we'll just put the feet on individually. 1, 2, 3. Let's get this out of here too. So we're going over here. Yep, that's it. And I'm just gonna lift it up. We have two different, like I said, spots to put that in, so put them in the bottom two, which will raise it up higher.
Oh, because I guess we could go there too.
Yeah, we're not gonna go narrow because it's the sound, it'll be in the way of the sound bar there. Push it in. All right, go ahead and screw those in. Let's bring the stand around and throw this up. Before we throw the TV up there, let's unbox the soundbar quickly, and then we'll have both ready to go. Coming up the top. Ooh, so cool. 4 instructions. Look at that. That's for setting it up and configuring it. Now this does work with the subwoofer and some of the speakers we already have, the smaller of the surround sounds. So it should sound pretty cool, but let's just get it out and ready to go. Ooh, that's a pretty cool looking soundbar. We'll flip it around. Wow, so cool. It's a 3.1. It's got center channel left and right, and then it has a couple of little subwoofers in there. So not bad at all. It's a nice looking soundbar. It's got the mount holes you can put up there, HDMI output for the ARC, the power button and all that right there. Power, input, Bluetooth, volume. Definitely a nice soundbar. So we'll move this away so we can put the TV up first, because you don't want to smash your soundbar with the TV. Yeah, so definitely different style remote from the other soundbars in this lineup. Jen has the one that you get with that's the A5000, 7000, and HT-A9. So I definitely like, you probably don't need all these buttons on it. A little easier. Plus you can use a Sony remote for a TV to do most of it as well. So pretty cool. Let's throw the TV up here and put the soundbar under it and see what it looks like and sounds like. Ready, 1, 2, 3. All right. Hey, guess what, Jen? It's time to take all the plastic off.
It's my favorite time.
Let's be honest, is that as satisfying as pulling plastic off or not?
There's still some plastic.
Some plastic. All right. Nice work, nice work. Good job, Jen. High five. I did notice as you were pulling the plastic off, that is incredibly black and it has really good anti-reflective properties, but you can see that rainbow effect issue that some people really don't like. It's more visible when the TV's off, but you know, when it's on and you have a lot of like ceiling lights or whatever, that's a very strong anti-reflective coating on there. So we'll have to see how that looks when the TV's on, but I just thought I'd mention that. And then going to the back, you can see this is a pretty thin TV. Sony, you know, LED TVs were thicker than this, mini LEDs thinner. This does have the backlight master drive, which was the new thing last year on the mini LEDs. I don't know if it was as big a deal as it was back in the day, just because mini LED TVs are so good in general, but you know, it does make this TV significantly heavier than the X90, which is the one that doesn't have that. So yeah, definitely a big difference. It does look premium. I like the, you know, the premium feel to it. It does have those covers that you had before. You can put all the covers on here to make the back look quite nice. But overall, nice looking TV. We do have the HDMI ports, all this here. So what do you got going on there, Jen?
So we've got our remote IR input right here, if you've got that. Then we've got our composite video in and the S Center speaker. So you can use some of your old school VCR equipment if you'd like.
So that's like a dual purpose input, kind of cool. Now the soundbar that we have, the S2000, actually doesn't utilize that S Center input, but the A series, A3000, 5000, 7000, and so up, does utilize it. So I guess we aren't going to be able to use these speakers in addition to the soundbar, but we'll be able to see the difference between the speakers and the soundbar and see which one's better. Probably the soundbar is going to be better.
I can't wait. And then we also have our USB here and an HDMI on the side. And then we have our other HDMIs down here, including our eARC. And then let's see, we've also got our remote and digital out and LAN, and then for our cable antenna down here. So pretty standard.
And it looks like 2 of the ports are 4K at 120, and they still have where one of them is the eARC there. So, you know, you can connect 2 next-gen game consoles, or you can connect 1 and the eARC. But the other 2 still can play gaming at 4K 60, which is totally fine. So, you know, pretty standard for Sony. And then it does have, it have like a 300 by 300 millimeter VESA pattern. It looks like that is the typical Sony standard there. Overall, pretty cool TV. You can, you know, put the feet into the middle there if you want. So it's a pretty good looking TV regardless. So let's grab the remote and then throw that soundbar in there and fire it all up and see what it looks like once we turn it on. All right, so here's the Sony remote. I really like the new style. They took away the number buttons. I just don't think you really needed them on this. I don't have cable, but you know, everything else is functional for all the different apps and things that we use. Sony has very good connectivity with other devices, so it works for Apple TV and all these other things that we may connect to the TV, including sound bars. But yeah, more or less you got home button, back button, a directional pad there, then you got your volume up and down, and then at the bottom here, you have 6 different apps. The only problem is sometimes you accidentally hit those and it takes you from what you're watching and it turns those on. So that's a little bit annoying to always have those advertisement type buttons at the bottom, but more or less I definitely like the design. I wish this was backlit. It only is backlit on the top A95L, I believe. But Jen, why don't you fire it up? Okay, here we go. We got the TV on. What do you think? Amazing or what?
It's another black box.
Yeah.
It's a smaller black box than our other black boxes, but there it sits.
You're so useful. I'm just kidding. So Google TV, I don't think it's changed since last year. It looks almost identical. I know there's a couple differences in the TV itself, and we're gonna get into some of the pros and cons and all that, the testing as we go here. But yeah, the operating system, it's pretty cool. We have YouTube TV, so it has some programs that are live. You can continue watching some things that you watch, like the last episode of Inside the NBA for the entire year, my favorite show. And we're gonna show you some Ant-Man and Wasp Quantumania because we have to test out this soundbar. I've already checked it out. Great soundbar. We're gonna play it in a bit and see what Jen thinks. But more or less you have, you know, all the apps you'd need, and it just goes on and on with things that you can potentially rent, buy, you know, I guess advertisements to a degree. But yeah, there's a lot to watch on this Google operating system.
Oh, and look, they even recommended a really cool video.
Yeah.
Check that out.
QLED versus OLED with a couple superstars.
Better watch that.
Superstar.
Hit me with some content, B.
So getting into some YouTube TV, which is the content that I watch, as I just said, this TV looks pretty good. What do you think?
I think it looks nice. There's like a crisp, clear picture. You can see a nice shine off of Charles' head.
Yeah. Yeah, you actually, it upscales fantastically. Like I noticed this when I was watching, that this lower resolution content looks fantastic. And some of the TVs we get, I'm always like, it just looks a little blurry. It doesn't look sharp, but it's cool because it's very detailed. And then there's very good highlights. You know, there's really good shadow detail. Darker areas look great in the screen here. But yeah, I'm really impressed with how this looks on this standard content. And this is like the worst of the worst. Like I don't think there's a whole lot that looks worse than YouTube TV. So this is a good start. I did have to go into the settings and kind of pump it up. We have it in the custom mode here. Messed around with the motion a little bit, all these things that you can do. And the peak brightness was off. I just had to raise it up so, you know, there was like full brightness. And then of course I had to turn the dimming on high. So that's all the things you'd want to do with an LED. But overall it looks really cool. Okay, now we're gonna watch some HDR content because that's what these TVs are supposed to excel at and look amazing compared to TVs from 10 years ago. I guess there wasn't really HDR then, was there? But you get the point. Now here on this TV, I can find a couple positives and a couple flaws. What do you think about this, first of all?
It's a dark scene, and there's two Paul Rudds, which I don't really have a problem with.
Something that I noticed on this TV, which is like any LED TV, is once you have a pretty dark scene, it is hard for highlights to pop through. And then when they do, there seems to be a little bit of blooming around some of the characters or some of the bright areas. I mean, on a bright HDR scene, it looks awesome, but it makes it a little bit more challenging to see the highlights in something like this. This movie is very dark in general, so that's something to point out. And we'll do a couple tests here to kind of show you the limitations of LED or mini LED, but we do have the S2000 soundbar connected, and I wanted to play that because, man, there is a big difference between using the TV speakers and the soundbar. You guys probably won't be able to really hear it, but I just wanted to get Jen's reaction to this. Okay.
Don't look at them. They're just possibilities.
Okay.
They're not you.
So that's without speakers, or with speakers, and this is the audio system. What do you think?
It feels like there's a lot more richer noise coming straight at me here with using the soundbar.
Yeah, so that's what I was gonna say. Like, definitely, like it has the tweeters on the top for when you just use the TV speakers, and then some sound coming out from the bottom. And we don't have a wall behind this, so I mean it's pretty far back. So if you had the wall right there, you'd probably notice that you know, you'd have some more reflection out toward your audience. But with the soundbar, there's no question about it. Just it comes straight out at you, and that is easier to hear the dialogue when people are talking. And I just think much more rich sound. So, you know, it is a nice little soundbar. I mean, it isn't free, you know, you have to buy it. So it's like $500, but I think it's a nice entry point for people that are probably just watching like news, cable, movies like this. If you're in an apartment, you don't need the subwoofer. The soundbar does work with the RS3S speakers and both the subwoofers. So really you can turn it into a whole home theater system. And it does have some of the nice surround sound features that Sony offers. This one specifically though does not connect with a cord, like I had said, the S center into the TV where it can utilize the TV speakers in addition to the soundbar. The ones that are like the 5000, the 7000, the A7000, and the HT-A9 can. So just pretty cool soundbar though.
It definitely sounds better than just the natural speakers on the TV itself.
Yes, agreed. But enough of watching this dark movie, because I can see from here there are some blooming issues around the edges of this funny scene.
Weird part.
I know, it's very strange. But you can see when I like even skip forward 10 seconds, you can see a little blooming around the little 10-second skip thing. And then again, when there's highlights on the screen, it's not that you just see the highlights, but you do see a little blooming around it. So let's test the blooming by going to one of the YouTube videos that we use. So there's a bunch of different tests we can use, but more or less we just need to see white areas next to what's supposed to be black areas on the screen. And obviously LED TVs are not like OLED. OLED TVs, you have the ability to control each individual pixel, but that's not the case on this. As you can tell, there's a little bit of blooming around these large circles. And again, it's one thing to show blooming in tests and another if it's coming up in real world content, but it's pretty significant amount of blooming for one of the best TVs from Sony. And the competition seems to be getting better and better at this. It definitely would be nice to see a little less on this really nice Sony TV. And then therefore it would translate hopefully to some of the content that we were showing you before. But off angle, it's even worse. So, you know, if this TV has that kind of wide viewing angle and it has that great anti-reflective coating, but if you're in a wide room from an angle like this, it definitely is a bit distracting. But you know, it's just one test and one thing. If you're in a brighter room watching brighter content, this is something you're not going to really notice. But those people considering using this for their dark room, you know, theater room TV, probably not going to be super happy. And rolling that into another test that we do, which is to check to see how good the screen uniformity is. This, you know, I'd have to say is pretty decent. Normally, a lot of these LED TVs, especially with that like anti-reflective coating that they have on here, tend to be not great, especially the VA panels. This is a VA panel. But overall, I think that looks pretty good. So I think you'd be pretty happy if you're watching sports, anything that pans left or right. It wouldn't be too distracting with the stuff in the background. So while the blooming isn't great, the dirty screen effect or the uniformity looks pretty good. The other test we want to check out is how good this can handle reflections in a brighter room. Now we have this light on. Let me crank it all the way up. That's at 100%. And you can see that you do see some reflections, but I mean, this is pretty good actually. And the only problem is that, you know, rainbow effect that it sort of has where it kind of takes down that light by refracting it or reflecting it. I don't really know how to say that across the whole screen. And some people aren't a big fan of that, but it really does help with knocking that reflection down. Any of the TVs that I've seen this year that have reduced this rainbow effect are not as good at then handling the reflection. So it looks like Sony went more aggressive with this anti-reflective coating. And again, if you turn it down a bit, you can see, you know, I still have this light on, you know, 30 or 40%. I can't even see it in the background. So you can tell on the little wand light, the little lightsaber you can see. But it's really good. Probably one of the best at knocking down that reflection, but you then just have to deal with that kind of like rainbow going across the screen. Okay, and then gaming, of course, which is kind of a test in itself because we need to figure out what, you know, features it has, what features it doesn't have. You know, I've always enjoyed gaming on Sony TVs. I know people that are hardcore can find flaws, you know, things that they don't have, such as, you know, not having 4 HDMI ports that can game 4K at 120. When speaking to Sony about that, most people don't really need 4 ports that can do that. And I think having the soundbar lineup, not this soundbar specifically that we have, but the, you know, HT-A5000, HT-A7000 and whatnot have an input or two that add in more gaming features so you can connect, you know, even 3 devices, or if you have one of the receivers, you're able to source that. But overall, I think Sony gaming is fine. I do like that they have the pop-up now so you can see the game menu, figure out if you want, you know, VRR on or off. If you have a darker scene, you can go to the black equalizer and increase the black levels so you can get kind of an idea of what's going on in a really dark scene. It does have things like the crosshair feature, so you can add that yourself. I mean, most first-person shooter games should have that anyways, but still, you know, they're adding stuff. Pretty cool. And I think really it's just about having the ability to see that you're, you know, in 4K 120 or whatever, HDR, Dolby Vision, or whatever you're in, and then knowing if VRR and all that's on. One thing I did notice is when you pop up this menu, you do see a little bit of blooming under it. So again, my main concern with this TV isn't that it isn't a great gaming TV, isn't great at HDR or anything else. The upscale is fantastically, very accurate. It's just that I can see a little bit of that blooming in a lot of different areas. But overall, gaming is still gonna be really fun on the X93L. Welcome back, Jen. You got to skip all the testing stuff, so.
Oh, I know, I planned it that way.
Yeah.
Haha.
Fun. Anyways, so overall, it's a pretty impressive TV. I have to say, watching a lot of the content, I was pretty amazed at how like detailed everything is.
Yeah.
The blooming's a little bit disappointing still, but I think that's something you're not going to see in real world content all the time, although it was noticeable in some of the dark scenes, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm hungry. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. You see stuff like this and you're like, let's have dinner.
Yeah.
But I was impressed with the S2000 soundbar as well. Pairing that with the mini LED here, backlight master drive, pretty cool setup. I think someone would be pretty happy having these two things in their house. Really good anti-reflective coating and all that. So we'll probably make another video answering people's questions. So make sure you guys comment below.
And if you want to figure out what TV is going to be best for you, go ahead and take our TV quiz below in the description. You'll find the link. It's going to ask you questions about your viewing distance from the TV, what kind of conditions, the lighting in your room, and what kind of content you like to watch. And you'll get an answer with a couple of TVs that'll work best for you. And if you want to take a look at some of our other videos, check out up here.
See you on the next one.
Bye.